welcome to On the Bubble Podcast, episode 147. I'm your host, Basa J. Wade, and with me is my co-host, Yuki Lee Bender. Today we're going to be doing our episode on how to draft Ziggy. This is probably one of the most complicated heroes we have in the Omens of the Third Age draft format, so we'll be taking our time and going over what we think is going to be the a very good or the best variant of Ziggy that you can draft for this format. But I guess before we do that, how's your week so far, Yuki?
It's been okay. I've been sick the last little while, so that's never fun. I've been trying to do as much constructed testing as I can since our nationals is like a few days away at this point, like 5 days, less than a week away. So yeah, I think I'm probably playing Acilio for nationals and I feel pretty good about where I'm at overall. Hoping to get another draft or two in before Nats because I haven't really been drafting that much last week. But yeah, it's been okay. Just kind of low energy. What about you?
I had to change some of my work schedule to be able to go to this Nats. So all I've been doing this whole week was just work, sleep, and then now recording. So a lot of that until to kind of get ready for Nats. I guess to talk about our Nats season, I think the biggest thing that we were kind of expecting to happen was Victor. We were expecting Victor to be LL'd by our Nats, but surprise, Victor just did not win events this weekend. So Victor is going to be legal for this event. Did you expect this?
It wasn't completely unexpected, but I felt like it was more likely than not that Victor would LL, especially after he got half the points week one, and there was twice as many events in week two. But it still wasn't the most number of events, so it wasn't like outside the realm of possibility. But it was, yeah. I think maybe like also like Prism LLing and Victor not LLing is like I didn't expect that combination to come, but here we are. I was considering maybe Syndra because I think you're pretty okay into Acilio, but then I don't really like the Victor matchup that much, and he's still around. She's okay into Victor. You can still play her. I think she's still solid, but yeah, I was kind of hoping for Victor to LL.
Yeah, I really wished Victor was going to LL too. I was thinking that maybe I can play Huntsman because Victor is one of the worst matchups for Huntsman right now, and that still being here means that if people bring Victor to Nats, those might just end up being losses for me if I bring it. But I don't know. I might still bring Huntsman anyway. There's enough copium with new assassin cards, so maybe we'll see. I'm kind of like in a loss of what to bring. Maybe I didn't actually put the Victor deck together, so if I can put together Victor, there's also a possibility I play Victor this weekend too.
Gotcha. Yeah, definitely still a very good choice. All right, let's move on to the Patreon shout out. Thank you to all of our patrons. We really appreciate you giving back to the show. We couldn't be doing what we're doing without you. So thank you so much for giving back. If you want to check us out, you can find us on patreon.com/onthebobble. We have a few different tiers. The holiday bobble and crack bobble tiers are there to show support and cost about the price of a cup of coffee. And we also have the titanium bobble tier. If you're interested in regular content right now, there is the Nationals Syndra guide out, which is quite similar to the Singapore winning list. I think that list was, seems like a lot of similar ideas there. So that has full sideboard guide, how to play guide, and everything if you're interested in that. And more content to come soon. There's also some other tiers with coaching perks available for a monthly coaching session if that's something you're interested in. But also, if you're not able to get back to the show, we still really appreciate you. So thank you to all of our listeners who tune in. You are the reason that we do the show is because people listen, get value out of the show. So hoping to meet some people, say hi to some people at Nationals. And if you're looking to buy some singles for Canadian Nationals, I would go to invasioncnc.ca. They're hosting Nats this year, and you can use code YLB5 to get 5% off all your singles at checkout. And I believe there's a pickup option, or you can put it in the notes to have it picked up at Nationals. So definitely a good option if you're looking for some last minute cards to get ready for your event.
Awesome. Then let's get right into it. All of these episodes end up being a little bit longer, so Let's start talking about the Ziggy cards right away. The Ziggy cards are they have very polar kind of block values, and we'll start by talking about block values again. So the Ziggy cards, including the Illusionist and the Lightning Illusionist cards, there's 12 3 blocks at rare and 3 no blocks. These actually, the Ziggy rares actually block pretty well, mostly because the no blocks that we're talking about here are corrosive space dusts, which also just have ward once you play them out. But they have 24 commons, and 12 of them, which is half, block for 3, and the other 12 are no blocks. They're pearls. But all of those cards will have either ward 1 or ward 2, depending on what color they are. They're going to be yellow or blue.
And Hollow Shield's in there as well as ward 4.
Yes, all the colors of Hollow Shields are in there. So Ziggy cards surprisingly block pretty well as long as you don't have too many of the pearls in your deck. Like if your opponent just presents physical, then if you have too many pearls, they could just kill you. But in general, like your cards will end up blocking one way or another.
Yeah, and I think because Ziggy wants to go long, having these blocking cards is like pretty important. Ziggy values block value more than I think any of the other heroes.
Yes. And then just a quick reminder about the Lightning and generic cards. We've already talked about this. If you have not listened to our How to Draft Aurora episode, we go into a little bit more deeper onto the Lightnings and generic block values, but I would recommend you listen to that. Just a quick reminder, the Lightning rares typically do not block too much. There's going to be 10 2 blocks and 2 0 blocks, and then the commons block a little bit better with some more 3 blocks, but most of those cards still being 2 blocks and no blocks. As always, your generics and your lightning cards, don't rely on them to block. They are going to be mostly your offensive cards. Okay, so that aside, let's talk about our equipments for Ziggy. So let's talk about the kind of the specialization equipment for the Ziggy, which is Fingers of Fragmentation. This is the arm piece that you get to pay 2, and at attack reaction, you can give a attack that has fragmented plus 2 power. Do you like this card, Yuki?
It's okay. I feel like I like that it's 2 damage in terms of deck value. It helps you convert. It's pretty good turn 0. Like if you send Shattering Flow Tide, you don't really want to give them 2 cards and they can bop this, and like that's pretty good. But overall, I think it's just okay. I think I might like the Astral Sanctuary prevention equipment more than this, but if I have one of these, I probably wouldn't pick up an Astral Sanctuary piece.
Okay. I guess a better comparison would be like, what about like Seeker's Mitts? Like, would you like Seeker Mitts better, or do you think Fingers of Fragmentation better?
I think Fingers of Fragmentation are a little better, but it's pretty close.
Okay, that makes sense. I think if you're thinking about like fatigue math, and if you're going to try to be fatiguing a lot of people, then Fingers of Fragmentation is pretty good because in this format you have to fatigue by damage, right?
Yes, yeah. That is sort of like the biggest pro of this card. I also think that Aurora is like a little tough for Ziggy if you don't have enough equipment, and the prevention equipments are just like very good for stopping Scorpio. So yeah, Fingers of Fragmentation is good. It's not always the most efficient to use though, so sometimes you like don't have the spot to use it, and so yeah, I think it's like fairly close with the prevention equipment. It's fine. I think it's like maybe on the weaker side of the class equipment.
Yeah, I think the cost of 2 resources is very real on this card, and it kind of requires you to have either like 2 floating resources, which isn't actually that common when you're playing the 2 costs, or you need to have like a full card in your hand that you're willing to pitch into this if the opportunity arises, which isn't actually efficient, right? Like when you think about just like 4 card conversions and stuff like that, Fingers of Fragmentation doesn't actually help too much with it. There's a lot of awkward spots where if your opponent ends up blocking with 2 cards on a turn you're thinking about Fingers of Fragmentation, like they give you 2-3 blocks on your 2 for 7. That's blocking essentially for 10, so even activating Fingers of Fragmentation doesn't push it over at all, right? So there's like a lot of scenarios where Fingers kind of get like scuffed out if you're not too careful, and you could lose a lot of value that way.
Yeah, they also have to block because the card has to have fragmented, so you kind of need them to block, but not too much, which is a little tough. but they're not bad. If you get an opportunity to use them that seems decent, like if you can use it turn 0, just use it is kind of my recommendation with this, because it's awkward enough that you don't always get to activate it.
Yeah. If it leaks 2 damage turn 0, it's very strong.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What about the other equipment cycles? We already talked about the Sanctuary cycle being very, very powerful in this format. Do you like any of the Seekers or the 2-cost cycle for Ziggy?
I think Seekers is decent. You do have like Ward Auras, so you can combine like 2 costs with 1 cost equipment, or sorry, with like 1 cost auras or things like this. You can often make use of the extra resources a little bit easier in Ziggy, so I don't mind the costed equipment. I think that Lace Lightning in particular is pretty good. Embodiments just helping you convert and have a big turn are really strong in Ziggy, and I think at a bit of a premium, because you're kind of the hero that doesn't have easy access to embodiments and go again like Aurora does, but you do play a lot of attack actions. So I think Lace Lightning kind of goes up in this hero. Starflow Robes is still good, and Constella TR is still probably the one I'm the lowest on, but it's still okay.
Yeah, I think the Ziggy decks with the Lace Lightning does get to be way more explosive, and honestly, might be best in slot leg piece for Acilio. I might rather have Lace Lightning in not Acilio, in Ziggy than the Sanctuary leg piece.
Yeah, I think so.
I feel like the Seeker cycle isn't actually as good in Ziggy as like in the other 2 heroes. I find it pretty hard to kind of end up using that extra resource, or like, if I pitch a blue into a Seeker, it's kind of hard to use the 2 more resources. What do you think? Like, I haven't had like a real reason to wanting to pitch into a Seekers often.
Yeah, it's not great. I think your best options are like Calm Veil or another piece of equipment. Your Ziggy activation does cost 2, but you usually want to use a Proteus. If you have 2 Seekers, sometimes you can combine it with like a Ward 2, but you're just like doing 2 card for prevention with 2 equipment. You get some bonus from the yellow aura breaking, depending on the one, but it's a little bit clunky for sure.
Yeah, I think out of the 3 heroes, the Seeker equipment kind of go down in value in Ziggy. And then I might even prioritize some like blue 3 blocks, or like, a reasonable good red attack over it.
That's fair. That's fair.
I guess we can just move right into it. You want to talk about the key cards for Ziggy and what cards we're actually looking for to go into Ziggy?
Yeah. So first off, Corrosive Space Dust, just strictly better Hollow Shield. The arcane damage when it leaves is incredibly good, especially with the weapon Aphrodite. So often you want to play Space Dust on your turn, flicker it on their turn, activate the weapon, and that's just 4 arcane, which is a lot of arcane to stop at instant speed. In addition, you get Ward 2, 3, or 4, depending if it's blue, yellow, or red. I actually just like all the colors of this card a lot. The red has kind of the best value. If you get to play it on your turn relatively freely, then flicker it. It is like a 2-card 8 that doesn't use your action point, which is great. And then the yellows and blues are easier to get to second cycle and just kind of finish them off with arcane, and that's also very good. They're very flexible. So honestly, all of the colors of Corrosive Space Dust are great.
Completely agree with you. Like, Corrosive Space Dust is like probably one of the highest. It might just be the highest like valued card in Ziggy, right? Like, in terms of like converting the card, like this is the only card in the card pool that doesn't like get devalued by your opponent's card, or if your opponent just like blocks with something like fragment, just devalues your card. Corrosive Space Dust, there's like no way to devalue this card unless you can like do an instant speed 1 ping to try and pop the ward. But if you have like, a flow or something, this can easily be prevented.
It's just a very, very high value card, and the arcane is really, really strong. I guess our next key card, Blink of an Eye. In general, the rare fragments are quite good in Ziggy. I think Blink of an Eye is maybe the strongest one. This is whenever this fragments, you put a trigger on the stack that essentially gives you a Ziggy activation where you can blink target aura and have it come back with a hollow counter on it, which also enables the weapon and any of the like your hollow shields and space dust will have higher board values because of the hollow counter. Auric shards also. Blink of an eye is so strong.
What's really important about this card, though, is that you do really want the aura already on board that has another ability. Let's say something like a circular flow tide, a applicable conflux, crackle from afar, kind of like any of these auras. You kind of just want already on the board. Even if you have like corrosive space dust, any of these auras, if you already have it on board, it also allows you to activate Aphrodite off of a single blue pitch, which is one of the highest like you attack for 2 for 7 and then you also shoot for 2 as long as you already have the aura on board. So it just does a lot of damage. And because the trigger goes on the stack, you don't actually even have to have the aura on board already. You could just play it after your opponent blocks. Your opponent doesn't even know which aura is going to come out on board.
Yeah, for me, this is the one that comes up a little more often. If you and if you have multiple, if they block with multiple cards and you have multiple auras, you can blink multiple auras as well. Fragments, every time it fragments, it has this effect. But yeah, I think like Auric shards is a great one to pair with this, where they can't really take 7, so maybe they block a card and then you can give it +5 for 1 resource. You don't get the swing, but that's okay. Space dust is also great. Once again, you don't get the weapon activation off of a blue, but that's okay. You still are going to get essentially like 2 arcane and ward 4 out of the red one, so you turn your red space dust into like a 1 for 6, which is great. So those are probably the best ones to pair with it. But yeah, this card is always really scary, both to block and to no block. Just taking 7 from Ziggy is something you're very happy with as a Ziggy player. So yeah, I think Blink of an Eye is probably the best rare fragment.
Yeah, I think so. And then right underneath Blink of an Eye is going to be Polaris Pulse Ray. This is the fragment rare that when it fragments, it deals 1 arcane damage to a defending hero. It attacks for a 2 for 7, and if your opponent blocks it, it leaks 1 extra. So let's say your opponent blocks for a 3 block, they still take 2, and they also take 1 more arcane, so they take 3. If your opponent blocks with 2 cards to completely block Polaris Pulse Ray, they still take 2 because it fragments twice. This just leaks damage. And I think even the yellow one is pretty good too.
Yeah, yellow is also good. Ziggy just really wants to be able to get the opponent's life total down low so you can win with the weapon, with space dust, with cosmic dualities. Just arcane, instant speed arcane is kind of how you finish the game. And your fragments all get really strong when they have to block them. So cards that force their life total down are really good, and Polaris Pulse Ray is just one of the better standalone ways to do this. Most often your opponent will block 1 card, which basically makes this into a 2 for 6. But it's a 2 for 6 that leaks damage, which is exactly what you want as Ziggy.
Ziggy typically ends up having some of these issues of leaking damage. I think Polaris Pulse Ray and Corrosive Space Dust are the kind of the 2 ways that you're trying to chip your opponent down, so then like the Ziggy player doesn't fatigue. And you're really going to be looking for Polaris Pulse Ray or Corrosive Space Dust that kind of guide your way in so then you can actually finish the game. I think one of the biggest problems with Ziggy is that if you are lacking Corrosive Space Dust, the Pulse Rays, you might end up in spots where you kind of get to like second cycle or near the end of the game, and your opponent is still at like 9 or 8, and it's really hard to close the game with Ziggy while your opponent is that high.
Yeah, exactly. So I think for Ziggy in general, you want to trade cards, but you also want to get their life total down. So yeah, that's why these cards are so high. A little bit under this is Fraying Life Force, very similar to Polaris Pulse Ray, but whenever it fragments, you gain a life. Same value proposition. Gaining life is a little bit worse than forcing your opponent's life total down, I think, in Ziggy, but Fraying Life Force is still great. Typically, this means you get to block a little bit less, which helps you push damage or trade more cards. It's still good deck value. It's just on the defensive side.
I think this card is just really, really important to Cilio. It kind of pads your life total, and a lot of the times Cilio kind of wants to block 2 cards and you just gain 2 life, which is worth a lot against arcane spells.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially good there, but yeah, really strong in general.
And then let's talk about Shattering Flowtide. but especially in red. So what this card is a 0-cost fragment attack, attacks for 5, blocks for 3, and it says when this fragments, create a lightning flow token. In Ziggy, lightning flows are kind of the way that you progress your game and activate Aphrodisias. So this card just being a 0 for 5 that if your opponent doesn't block, they get chunked. You play this 4 times, your opponent just loses the game. So your opponent is kind of forced to block this card, which means you're almost always guaranteed to get a lightning flow token.
Yeah, their options are basically like take 5 or it's a 0. It's essentially like a 0 for 4, but one of that value is in the flow, which I think is significantly better than 1 in Ziggy. Maybe not like a full 2 points, but it's definitely worth more than 1, I think, because your weapon is so important. So yeah, Shattering Flow Tide, all the colors are good. Red is especially good. This card turn 0 is just like always great.
I think flows might be worth very close to 2 in Ziggy. Obviously, they have kind of like diminishing returns, right? Like your 5th flow is going to be worth closer to 1, but your like first couple of flows are, it can even be worth like 3 points in some scenarios.
Yeah. If you're like turning on the Space Dust Ward effect, plus getting the Arcane, plus getting a ping, it's huge. So yeah, the flows can be really, really important. And because of that, the flow makers are really good. So Shattering Flow Tide is great. Circular Flow Tide, this is the yellow 1-cost Ward 2 aura that when it leaves, it makes a flow. Not only is this a great way to make a flow, but you can also just kind of use your weapon activation for free. Like if this is on the board, maybe you played it on your turn, you can just pitch a blue to deal 2 arcane, essentially, because you lose a flow to activate it, but then you get the flow right back, and then it will still make a flow the second time it leaves. So you're always like going to be up 1 flow when you play this card, but you get a free weapon activation if you want. This card's great. It is short printed, so I kind of think that if you see this card in the pack, you need to take it, or you're probably not going to see another one. Like this feels like equipment to me, weirdly, in terms of like how much you have to prioritize it. Maybe like some of the rares I would take over it that we talked about, but this card's really, really important.
Yeah, I feel like this card is one of your most important glue pieces for this deck. Obviously, the rares like the Polaris and the Corrosive Space Dust is like the way you win the games, but Circular Flow Tide is kind of how you like piece together or put together your deck and your games so that you end up in a spot where you can win games. So, kind of if you're missing the rares, you're probably not going to have a good Z deck. And if you're missing Circular Flow Tides, you're also gonna be struggling into a lot of decks as well. So I think Circular Flow Tide is one of the most important glue pieces for this deck.
And I think that basically you want some combination of these rares, Shattering Flow Tides, and Circular Flow Tides to have a strong Ziggy deck. There's some other important pieces that we're going to touch on, but in terms of like getting into the deck, these are kind of the cards that really make me want to be Ziggy. There are some lightning rares that we'll get to, but these are like the reasons. And I think there's a lot of other commons that are kind of okay that you can draft Ziggy for that don't necessarily lead to you having a strong deck. So Ziggy is this strange hero where I think you're kind of reliant on like a handful of specific cards. And it doesn't mean that you need to have like one of all of them. If you don't have Circular Flow Tide, but you have Blink, Polaris, Fraying Life Force, and a bunch of Shattering Flow Tides with some other auras, like you can still have a great deck. But yeah, you want some combination of these kind of like power cards.
Yeah, the more you have, the better your deck is.
Yeah, very, very much so. There's a great draft in, I think it's day 1, maybe it's day 2 of US Nationals. It's Lucas Oswald's draft. He winds up in a 4 Ziggy pod where he like gets a bunch of these rares early, and then for some reason there's 4 Ziggies in the pod. And his deck is like not great overall because there's 4 Ziggies, but he just has like multiple Fraying Life Force and Polaris Pulse Rays, and you can watch the games and it really, I think he ends up 2-1, but those cards really carry his draft. Like it's very impressive how much just playing the rare each turn is like really powerful. Like it just wins games.
Yes. I guess another card to talk about will be Cosmic Duality. So Cosmic Duality of the Duality cycle is it kind of feels a little bit lacking, but it is still very important in the sense that it creates the lightning flow token, right? Like as we said earlier, the first couple of lightning flows is very, very important in this hero. If you are going to be struggling making lightning flow, you definitely need cosmic dualities to kind of like increase that lightning flow generation in your deck.
And I think the blue one is the best. These are not great cards to attack with because if they block a card, it's kind of like a 2 for 5 if it's a 3 block, which is not really where you want to be. But the blues are great for getting flows and arcane damage at the end of the game. That's how you close, and the yellow is also reasonable for this reason. So you really like the ones that are resource cards in Ziggy.
Yeah, and they're just 3 blocks, right? So like they block really well.
But this is not really a reason to be Ziggy so much as an important glue piece. Maybe a card that is bordering on a reason to be Ziggy, weirdly, is Flittering Spike, especially the red, but all the colors are playable. Again, helps with flow generation and should be no surprise at this point, but there are lots of costed instants to pair with this, like Circular Flow Tide, like Corrosive Space Dust, that can easily give it the plus power and turn this on. So I think Flittering, and it's a 3 block as well. And it doesn't have a lot of the fragment downsides either, where they can block and devalue it. I think Flittering Spike is like one of the best threats in Ziggy that isn't one of these rare fragments or Shattering Flow Tide.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it pairs really, really well with the blue common auras, like the 0 cost ones too, right? Like giving this card go again can be really, really devastating for your opponent. Giving this card +1 typically forces the damage to make a lightning flow. This card's very flexible, also being a 3 block for some weird reason.
Flittering Spike is like, we've talked about it a little bit in all the heroes. I think it's like one of the better lightning commons, but Ziggy is definitely the home where it is the strongest. If I have a draft where I get like a few red Flittering Spikes early, and then I see like red Shattering Flow Tide, I'll be like, yeah, maybe I can be considered being Ziggy here.
Talking about the common lightning attacks, the big lightning rare attacks like Rift Breaker or like the +1 cycle that's on hit make a lightning flow, these cards are really, really good in Ziggy as well. Mostly because they don't have Fragment.
Yeah, Fragment is like mostly a downside. Yes, you need it if you're playing Auric Shards. We'll get to Auric Shards in a second. But really, you want like a few Fragment cards, maybe if they're like the rares and Shattering Flow Tides, and then I would want the rest of my cards to just be like lightning cards that are do what they say they do. For the most part, Fragment is not actually an upside, and I think that drafting too many of these like Pulsing Cardias, Ebbing Flow Strides is like doesn't really lead you to a great deck. That doesn't mean like don't draft them, don't play them. You can still play them, but they're not. You can't fill your deck with these cards and expect to win games. They're mostly 3 blocks, and yes, Pulsing Cardia pairs with Auric Shards. It has a role to play, but it's like kind of fillerish. You really want big attacks that do lots of deck damage and trade for multiple cards.
I think there is a variant of Ziggy where you can like kind of cheese your opponent with like multiple Auric Shards, but it's just like not a consistent variant of the deck. And because this game is best of one and draft is also best of one, I've like tried to put together these like Auric Shards, Pulsing Cardia, Ebbing Arcstride decks. I drew double Auric Shards and no Fragment cards. I guess I lost this game. Or like, wow, my hand is just double Pulsing Cardia and an Ebbing Arcstride, and my opponent didn't block the first Arcstride. Like, I just IP2 and lose. Like, there's like a lot of these really, really awkward non-converting hands. So just cards that purely convert is going to be very important. And a card that does that is like Storm Shard, right? Like, unlike Auric Shard that can only target an attack with Fragment, Storm Shard targets any lightning attack, which is basically anything in this deck.
Yeah, I think Storm Shard is overall more flexible and easier to resolve than Auric Shards. And I think having like one Storm Shard to push your opponent's life total again, kind of like the Polaris Pulse Ray, is actually pretty important. And if you see it as a very high pick, you can use an Auric Shard to fill this role. I think where I'm at is I like having, if I can't get a Storm Shard, I like having one yellow Auric Shard in my deck. I think is like exactly the right number and pitch. The thing I like about the yellow, the red, you always have to play it, and like you need the Fragment card, and we kind of talked about how you don't always want Fragment cards, and you need the flow, and sometimes you need them to block a certain amount, and you need like the resources and a big hand, and it just like asks a lot of you. The yellow orc shard, it plays all your fragment cards, it plays all of your costed lightning cards, and you get to pitch it to second cycle where it's going to be easier to resolve if you need it to. So I actually just like the flexibility on the yellow, and I'll gladly take that flexibility for the -1 value is I think where I'm currently at.
Okay, okay, that's a really interesting take. I think yeah, like a very easy way to think about this card is Orc Shard Red just is a +5 if you it's like a 3 for 5 go again essentially if you play it on a card with Fragment. So it's a lot of value, but yeah, you're right. When you have to play this card for like a the red one is just like if you can't flicker it for some reason, it's a 1 cost +1 ward one. That is significantly below value. And if you can't pitch this card to play your like 2 cost attacks, you end up like arsenaling it. It gets stuck there. You might have to like randomly play it with your floating resource and just to get it out of your arsenal, and that could be quite quite bad, at least for your like average turn cycle, essentially.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I think I like one yellow auric shard, and it's not a high pick, I should say. You can get this pretty late, especially because you only want one. Like, don't prioritize this. It's just if you don't get storm shard because that card is a very high pick, you can get one yellow auric shard, and I think it's fine. If you have enough like Polaris and Space Dust and Flow Tides and Arcane Damage that you don't need it, you don't have to play these. But I think most Ziggy decks like having one trick to kind of help chunk the opponent.
Yes, yes, it really does chunk your opponent. I guess this next card doesn't really chunk your opponent, but it definitely does force your opponent to block. And that card is going to be Clear Conscience. This is a rare illusionist attack. Attacks for 8 at red and blocks for 3. And this card says when this hits a hero, each hero puts a card from their hand on the bottom of the deck and creates a Ponder token. These two things are separate. They do not need to bottom a card to make a Ponder, but at the same time, you do not need to bottom a card to make a Ponder. So if this hits and you have no cards in hand, it just makes a Ponder token, which is kind of a must block for your opponent.
Yeah, especially with all the instant speed auras that Ziggy has. You don't know what they're holding, and sometimes if you don't block this, they can empty their hand, play out some auras, get a ponder token, and it's just a ton of value. Even if they just have an arsenal and you're like, maybe they can't ponder, and if they have like a nourishing glow in there, they get the ward 1, gain 1, and then they get a ponder and they get to arsenal that card if it's good. So yeah, this card is basically always a card you have to block. I think all the colors are decent. The blue can be covered up with a 3 block and an equipment. The yellow is like a 3 block and then it's 2 points over, which is still a must block. And then obviously the red is the most efficient and the biggest must block. But I think this one, the colors all feel relatively close to me, like more so than most cards in the set, just because you always get the breakpoint of like requiring 2 cards to stop this.
Okay. That makes sense. Obviously, the red just has more numbers on it, so I like that best. But yeah, the yellow one is good too. Like there have been so many spots where I play this card and my opponent just goes, "Oh, I wanted to keep my hand," but they can't, right? Like if it hits, they have to bottom a card, so they still like lose their card. So they kind of have to block with 2 cards on this card.
Yeah, and once you block with the first card, it's like, well, I'll still take like 2 or 3. I'll still take like 3 damage, and they get a ponder. So like the extra card is worth 3 and a ponder. So at this point, I'm just supposed to block with 2 cards, like basically 100% of the time.
Yeah. There are some scenarios in this format where your opponent's just like looking at pearls in hand, and they're just like, "Wow, I can't block this card," and ends up like blocking with 2 cards, then IP1 passing, doing nothing. Kind of happens with this card too, right? So like I feel like this card in particular can cause the most amount of like blowouts for Ziggy if it just like lines up perfectly.
Yeah, and it's especially good into Aurora where they want to keep cards and hit you. So yeah, Clear Conscience is a solid card. I think it's like not quite on the same power level as the other rares, but it is a nice to have.
Yeah, it's like one of those like really nice to have. Like I would love to have 1 red or 1 yellow in my deck in every Ziggy deck, but like, would you go in for Ziggy for this card? I don't think so, right? Like it just kind of doesn't actually close the game in a way you need it to.
Probably not. Maybe it depends on like the other cards in the pack, but I'm not like I don't think I'm pick one, pack oneing this card very often, is what I would say.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I think I'm in the same boat. I think it's one of like the more powerful cards in the set overall, but it's like we almost didn't put this card in the key card section, but when I was looking at the card list, I'm just like, Clear Conscience is just so good. I think we need to put it on the list somewhere. So we ended up putting it at the very bottom of the key list cards.
Yeah. So yeah, I think Ziggy is very much a deck that needs specific pieces, and this doesn't really fill any of these roles. So it doesn't make your bad Ziggy deck into a good Ziggy deck. But if you have like a good Ziggy deck and you have a Clear Conscience, it'll make it better. Is kind of like how I would think about this card.
Oh, that's a great way of putting it. Okay, then I guess we talked about it already a little bit, but how do we get into Ziggy? Like, what is your ideal way to get into Ziggy in this draft format?
Probably the rares. The rares are the biggest way. Polaris, the Blink of an Eye, Corrosive Space Dust, Fraying Life Force, any of those rares are great ways to get into Ziggy. I think the other way to get into Ziggy is kind of like a stay open route where you get some lightning rare attacks like Rift Breakers, the +1 pump, on hit flow cards, Visionary, maybe like a Storm Shard, some Flittering Spikes, and then you see like pick 4, pick 5, red Shattering Flow Tide or circular Flow Tide is the other way. And that doesn't mean, I think an important thing is like, if Ziggy has seemed open, you see that card, it can be like, I'm going to take this red Shattering Flow Tide because it's like it's starting to get a little bit late for this card. And like, maybe I can be Ziggy and see how the packs break from there. But you don't have to like hard commit at that point because you have a pretty open start. So yeah, I think those are kind of like the two ways. You either start with a bunch of rares. That's probably my preferred way because it feels the most safe. But if I have enough of the like strong synergy pieces and I see like Shattering Flow Tide or Circular Flow Tide, I think those are the cards I'd go in for at common.
Mostly when Ziggy's open and you're starting to get past these red 2-cost rare fragment attacks, that's kind of like your ideal spot to be in for Ziggy. But like, because you kind of just like need these density of these like 2-cost fragment attacks, you either need to get past them or you need to open them. And if you needed to open them and it's getting cut from you, you don't ever want to have a deck with like no 2-cost rare fragment attacks, and like, you know, you can't really call yourself like a good Ziggy deck without these cards. The only way to get them is to either get past or you have to open it. So yeah, I think you are right. If the deck is not open, you really don't want to like kind of end up in Ziggy and then get these 2-cost fragment attacks that cut from you later in the pack as well, right? Like that's kind of like the double whammy how to lose with Ziggy 101.
Yeah, I think a trap that I've seen in like some draft reviews I've done, or just even talking with people at Armory about their draft, is they're like, oh, like I had some lightning cards and like, you know, I had some like, you know, like the Flittering Spikes, big attacks, whatever. And then I saw like red Pulsing Cardia. So I took that. And then I took a blue Cosmic Duality because that's a pretty good card. And then I took Ebbing Arc Stride. And it's just like, okay, but like yes, you're getting past Ziggy cards and maybe they're like the right colors and stuff, but those aren't really the cards that make me want to go Ziggy. And I think you can kind of like get baited into drafting Ziggy because you're seeing Ziggy cards, but they're not the ones that really make the deck tick. And you kind of just wind up with this pile of cards that
say Illusionist on them.
Yeah, it says Illusionist on them and it kind of struggles to close games.
Yeah, I think the biggest trap maybe for Ziggy, this might be the overrated thing about Ziggy, or like the overrated cards for Ziggy, is that because the cards, they either block for nothing or they block for 3, the 3 blocks kind of stand out, right? Like in draft, like you look at a 3-block blue and you're like, oh, I kind of want this card. But if they're not really like the good cards, they're not really like, they shouldn't really push you into that hero, right? And I feel like Ziggy kind of has like this issue of, yeah, like red Pulsing Cardia does sound good and looks good stat wise. A 0-cost, essentially 3 power, 3 blocking card. And it's like, man, that card, like if you saw that card and it didn't have any text on it, you just wouldn't be interested in. So like this shouldn't really push you into that hero, even though the card kind of like looks fancy and looks good.
All right, let's move on to overrated and underrated. Overrated cards. My first one is Auric Shards Red. I think this is like the overrated Ziggy card. We talked about this a bunch. It's just so awkward when it's awkward. I think you can put one red one in your deck. I think I prefer the yellow. I see people pick this like pick 4 and they're like, now I'm Ziggy. And I think those are like a lot of people's early impressions and they've kind of stuck around a little bit. And I just think this is not the case. Orc shards can be powerful. It's not really a reason to draft Ziggy. And I think the best Ziggy decks don't necessarily have orc shards in them.
You know the reason why that's the case? When Orc Shards is good, man, it destroys some games. Like,
Yeah.
when it gives 5 power onto a unblocked Ebbing Arcstride, and your opponent was at like 14, and you just like 10 them, there are 4. And the next turn you draw your Corrosive Space Dust, and your opponent's dead. Like, it feels so good with Orc Shards. If it lines up.
Yeah, the if it lines up is the big part. So yeah, we talked about orc shards, but I think this is the overrated card. And then we've also touched on this, but the fragment cards, the red fragment cards that aren't named Shattering Flowtide or are one of the rares. This includes like the rare that makes an embodiment is like also pretty good. It's not like quite on the key cards list, but like that one's solid. I would gladly play that one. But if there's not like one of these cards that gives you substantial upside if they block them, Fragment is actually just like a downside. And yes, like if you have an Auric Shards in your deck, do you want like a couple Pulsing Cardias to pair with it? Like, yeah, you probably do, because that's going to make your Auric Shards a lot better. But like, these aren't high picks. You're going to get these kind of late-ish into the pack, and you get them as a 3-block. You can play it as a 1-card hand. You can play with an Auric Shards, it's fine. But these are just like not high picks, and I think people just kind of see red, see 0 for 5, block 3, and they go, yeah, this is obviously a great card, and it just kind of isn't the case.
I think you know what the best way to think about these cards? In my mind at this point, Pulsing Cardia Orc Shards are just 2 bad cards, but when you put them together, they become a fine card together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not even like that much. It's like it's not like ridiculously strong either, right? Like, you're still spending 3 cards to leak 5 damage with Auric Shard, Pulsing Cardia, and a blue, assuming your opponent blocks with 1 card. So like, yeah, it is good when you get them together. Yes, you can play in a way to put them together, but like, it's still not a ridiculous value proposition you're getting. Like, just because you do Pulsing Cardia Orc Shards combo, it doesn't actually like win you the game on the spot. You still need to like continue playing, and you kind of need to do it either again or do something just as powerful 2 more times in the throughout the course of your game to still win your game. So I think these like clunky cards that you put together to do something a little bit above rate isn't always worth it.
Yeah, I think that's true.
So let's move on to our underrated cards next. You put Flittering Spike as your number 1 underrated card. Do you think this card's underrated?
Maybe like not so much the red, but the yellows and blues and Ziggy are like kind of great.
They're good, yeah. Flittering Spike's the most annoying card to block.
Yeah, I think like the way you can think about this is like the costed fragment cards are like 2 for 5s if they like the red one, like if you play a red duality, it's a 2 for 5 if they block it with a 3-block. Flittering Spike, if you have the instant to pair with it, which is what you usually want for the costed cards anyways, is still it's like a 1 for 5, so you can play it off a yellow with a 1 and play a 1 cost. It is a yellow, so it's a resource card. It still blocks for 3 and it has an on hit. Like, resolving this card, if provided you have the aura, is just like better than resolving red duality. And even the blue one as a 1 for 4 with an on hit is like, is not where you want to be, but for as far as a blue goes, it hitting a breakpoint is like pretty great. So I think like all the colors of Flittering Spike are pretty solid in Ziggy, and yeah, I think sometimes people pick like fragment cards over these, and I don't think you should. Well, not like blanket statement, but like some of the weak fragment cards.
That makes sense. You know what I love about Flittering Spike is that it wears an embodiment of lightning so well, right? Like,
yes.
When it attacks, even the red one, like when it attacks for a 1 for 4 go again, like what do you do against it? Do you block it for 6? Like, it feels so bad to block it for 6. Like, do you block it for 4? Like, that's still 2 cards out of your hand. Like, what do you do?
Yeah, it kind of feels like there's no good option. And then if they follow us up with a fragment, like you block it for 6, you didn't have an instant. They followed up with like a 2-cost fragment, and you're like, I really only wanted to block with 2 cards. It's kind of brutal. So yeah, I agree with that. Volatile Fluxer also. I think we've talked about this card in a lot of the heroes. I think all of them. I think it's maybe at its best in Ziggy because you have so many instances to turn it on. You're happy to block this away as a 3 block, and it helps you extend your hand if you have extra cards. So I think this is just solid.
Yeah, I think the reason why Volatile Fluxer is kind of good here is because you want Storm Shard in your deck, right? Like, this plus Storm Shard, the whammy, right? Your opponent looks at a red or yellow Volatile Fluxer and they're just like, show me if you have it. And you just Storm Shard it. Like, they get chunked. And honestly, I like doing this to cheese people more than I like using like Auric Shards to like the pulsing Cardia Auric Shard combo. I'd rather just do Volatile Fluxer Storm Shard and just cheese them that way.
Yeah, I agree. I think it also works kind of good with the curve where you have like 2 cost attacks and 1 cost auras. So like if you go second, you go Fluxer, play a yellow aura and for 1, and then play a Rift Breaker or something. Like that's just like an incredible going second turn. And similarly, like if your opponent blocks out and you draw into this hand, is just great. So this is kind of why I like having the red Volatile Fluxer. It just, in the right spots, it just lets you convert your hand in a very efficient way that's quite threatening to your opponent. And if they're pressuring you, it's a 3 block. You're happy to do some blocking and play like 1 to 2 card hands. That's a lot of what Ziggy does. So this card that's like good on offense and big hands and defends well is like very at home here.
The 3 block value on this card is what kind of carries its weight, right?
Yeah.
Next card here is kind of interesting to me. You like Astral Assault Red? So this card is the 2-cost lightning attack that blocks for 2, attacks for 5. But it says when this attacks, you may destroy a lightning flow, and if you do, this gets +2. So this is essentially a 2/4/7 if you break a flow. So it's like 2/4/6 with a question mark.
I think this card's pretty good if you have the flow generation to support it. It's not a high pick, but I've been coming up on this card a little bit. 7 is just a really big number, and you can pair it with a 1-cost instant. So this is kind of like a card you can look for late in the pack if your draft's not going super well, and it can be like a way, because we're like, oh yeah, it's great to have like the rare lightning big attacks and the rare fragment cards, but it's like, well, what do I do when I don't find them? And I think that these Flittering Spikes, Fluxers, maybe a red Astral Assault, probably only want 1, but I think these are ways to supplement your deck and kind of fill in some of the more mediocre Ziggy decks with cards that actually do something, because 7 is just a big number, and yeah, it takes a flow, but it is actually like one of the more efficient plays that we have access to at the common rarity.
Okay, that makes sense. I think this might be a good time to talk about it, but one of the most common win conditions for Ziggy is it ends up being fatiguing your opponent. Classic Guardian style fatigue is you want to play costed attacks that have big numbers, and the only big numbered attacks in this set have Fragment, which doesn't actually fit like that, big numbers stat line because of the -2 on the Fragment. But Astral Assault just forces your opponent to block with 2 cards and still leaks damage. So that's kind of exactly what you wanted to do for like that Guardian style attack with big attack fatigue decks, right? And this is like one of the only cards other than at rare to be able to pressure your opponent's deck through fatigue math.
Yeah, exactly. Like you just kind of need the big attacks. So like, yeah, there's the optimal ones, but if you need to draft Astral Assault red, you need to draft even red Heaven's Claws, like a 3-block that comes in for 5 and is actually 5. Those are cards that you can just like draft and put in your deck and feel okay about. They're not the most optimal version, but they get the job done. And another card like this is Conflicting Thoughts red. This is just a 0/4 opt 1 block 3. This is just a good 1-card play. It's a breakpoint. You probably leak a damage. You get to opt 1, has a little bit of utility. Would you rather this be Shattering Flowtide? Like, yeah, of course. But if this is a 1-card play, this is a better 1-card play than any of the common 0-cost fragments like the Ebbing Arcstride or Pulsing Cardia, because they just block it and then it turns into a 3-block. Whereas Conflicting Thoughts is just like, it's always a 4. So you get the breakpoint, you get the opt. Like, this card I've been pretty okay with having a red one in my Ziggy deck. It's just like a card you can block away when you have better things to do, and when you don't, it's a 1-card play and it probably leaks a bit of damage and takes a card.
This might be the only home for this card, right? Maybe Aurora sometimes plays it.
Yeah, I think like Aurora is not lightning, so it's like a little awkward, but you can play this if your draft's like really kind of weak. But I think this card's actually like not bad in Ziggy. It's like I do think in a lot of decks, if you don't need like the Auric shards, this is just better than the non-shattering flow tide zero costs. It just does what you want, which is like a weird thing to say, but
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, one card, 0 for 4. When you don't have a weapon, you really do need to rely on just like pure stats.
yeah. And Ziggy's kind of the deck where that is the most important. So yeah, I felt like I saw this card, and my initial impression when I saw this card was like, oh, this is great because like Winding Blow 0 for 4 block 3 is always good, and this one ops 1, so like this card's gonna be great. And then it kind of just like wound up being not good anywhere, but I actually think it's okay in Ziggy.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Honestly, the biggest home for these like lightning one costed attacks that just like the Heaven's Claw and stuff like that, just like it feels like Ziggy is the best home for these cards.
Yeah, you're kind of fine playing it. Even like Beckoning Brilliance, 0 for 4, instant cost 1 less. You can play a yellow ore off of it. It's like pretty fine. It doesn't block for 3, which I don't like, but like you can put it in your deck. It's okay. So I think a lot of these, like, yeah, Ziggy just kind of like stats on the attacks because the fragment cards are so the way they are.
It's so true. It's so true. Okay. Then let's move on to our deck outline. I think we're making good time right now. Yeah. So, what do we want for our decks? Let's talk about our blue count first. Big blue count deck, small blue count deck. What do you think?
I think you want a little bit higher end of the blue count, like 10 to 12, especially if you're playing Space Dusts or maybe Hollow Shield where you want to flicker on their turn. Because if you ever do the play where you go like Flittering, Spike, Space Dust, you're feeling great, and then you don't draw up your blue, it feels really bad.
Mm-hmm. And this is a deck you want like 2 blues in a hand, right? Like you want to play your 2 cost fragment attack, and then also flicker your 1 cost aura of the turn when you draw up. So you do need 2 blues every hand.
Yeah, sometimes you can function with like a blue and a yellow, I think. So yeah, I think 10 is like on the lean end. I might play even like 13 blues if I have good blues and enough threats. But yeah, you want like probably like 20-ish resource cards in this deck.
Okay. So you're looking at like 10, 12 blues and then a bunch of yellows on top.
Yeah, because you're probably playing like yellow auras and stuff like this.
You want the yellow auric shards, right?
Yeah, yellow auric shards, the yellow ward 2 auras, yellow flittering spike,
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yellow rift breaker, another banger. It's a resource card, comes in for 5, has an on hit. Like these are the types of cards that I think like are kind of okay in Ziggy. They're again the most optimal version. Are you playing yellow rift breaker? Like probably not, but
it's fine.
I've been in the 4 Ziggy pod where I have these cards and my opponents have all the fragment cards. I'm like, you know what? My 2 blocks block for 4 against your fragment cards, and my yellow Riftbreaker for 5 is massive against your 2 blocks.
It's true. It's so true. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, and I guess you also just like need to make sure your blue base have 3 blocks in it though, right? Because when you do play a lot more blues, you do end up blocking with some of these blues too. So you really do want to make sure that you have the 3 block blues if you have a good density of blues.
And I think a big difference between drafting Acilio and Aurora and drafting Ziggy is in those 2 heroes, basically the class blues block for 3 for the most part. So you can kind of just wait on your blues and get late blues in your class, and that's like where you get a lot of your blues, and those are often the better ones because they block for 3. In Ziggy, you have a bunch of blue ward 1s, and you want a few of these for your weapon and things like this. They are good cards, but you don't want all of your blues to be this, so that like if you draw multiple blues, you want to be able to block with them. So this means that you need to prioritize the blue 3 blocks a little bit more, whether that's the class ones or the lightning or generic ones. You need to make sure that you're picking these up, because if you just kind of like wait for your class blues to come around late in the pack, you might wind up with like 6 Ward 1 auras and like, I don't know. There's also like Starlight Road, Digital of Lightning. Like I've seen some pretty rough blue bases and some Ziggy decks where people just like half their blues don't block, and that is a disaster.
Yeah. Mostly because like when your opponent, let's say you play the Ziggy mirror and your opponent attacks with the, I don't know, scattering conflux, like, you know, just like 2 for 7 fragment, and you look at your hand and you have like, let's say a really bad hand of like triple crackle from afar, which is the blue 0 cost no blocking aura with ward 1, and your last card is a blink of an eye. You look at that hand, you're just like, you have to block or you're going to lose, so you have to end up blocking with your good red 3 blocks. Like, that's just not how you win games, right? And then you end up with a hand of triple crackle from afar. Like, what do? You've kind of lost that game on the spot. You can't do that.
Yeah. So yeah, even into like Aurora and stuff, if you just like need the block and instead of blocking 3 you have a ward 1, it's kind of brutal. So I think that you just like want a few of these instant blues, and to make sure that you're getting your 3 blocks where you can, especially because you want a little higher blue count ideally. So like those blue dualities are like really high picks, for example, because they kind of fulfill multiple roles in the deck.
Yeah. Blue duality's best, probably the best blue 3 block, right? I think I can't even think of a better one.
Yeah, I think it's probably got to be the best one.
Maybe blue flittering spike.
Yeah, it's up there. Yeah, so in addition to your blues, you want a mix of 0 cost and costed red attacks. Ideally, some of these block for 3, but having some 2 blocks to get good numbers is okay. Just the more 2 blocks you have, the less flexible your hands are. So you ideally want a mix of these. And yeah, the idea is you can pair the costed attacks with your costed auras, and you can play the 0 cost ones as 1 card plays when you need to block down. Or maybe you like block 2 cards, arsenal a costed attack or an aura, and then wait to draw the other half of it and pair them up. That kind of thing is like usually what you want. And I think if you have like all costed attacks, it will feel clunky. If you have all 0 cost attacks, you won't have enough deck damage. So you really want like a combination of these. And I think ideally I'd want like 10-ish reds.
Yeah, the more the better, though, right?
I think so. Yeah, the more the better. But you do still need like a sufficient blue count in some of the yellow auras. So I think like you probably won't play much more than like 12 reds max.
Yeah. But I wouldn't really like think about, you know, being like, oh, I have too many reds or things like that. I think if you have just good reds, you just play them, and then you kind of just like end up with yellows because, you know, this, I feel like this format, it's, you end up with like a nice spread of 10 red, 10 yellow, 10 blue, just because of how like the packs kind of break down, right?
Yeah, I think that's true. So yeah, get your good reds where you can and make sure you're filling out your resources.
And also, just like we were talking about 3 block blues, 3 block yellows are great too. Like, just they kind of fill that role of like, when you need to block, it will block. And if you're gonna block, blocking with the yellow cards is fine.
Mm-hmm. Plays your 2 cost fragments. Actually very relevant for the 0. Yeah. So how many auras / instants do you like having in your Ziggy deck?
Honestly, it really comes down to how much flow generation you have in your deck. But the more flows you can make, the more you want. And I think maybe maximum up to 8. So that will give you kind of like enough auras to play one every turn. And then if you have enough flows and resources, you can like flicker with Ziggy, get the additional ability, and swing with activate Aphrodite. I feel like this has come to become the format where the difference between a good variant of a deck and a bad variant of a specific deck kind of ends up being how many times are you activating and using your weapon. And all of these weapons are like, they have something you have to go through to activate. Like Aphrodite is like probably the hardest one to activate, but like Scorpio also requires something. Asilios, Volzar also requires something to happen. Like, you do need to go through these hoops to attack with these weapons, but the more times you can do so, the stronger your deck is. So I think you do need to make sure you can activate Aphrodisias a good number of times, and the only way to do that is to have enough auras. So I think you need at least like, I don't know. I see you rate 6 to 8, but I think you can even play like 5 auras and still be fine with it, as long as they're like circular flow tides and stuff like that.
Yeah, 5 can be okay. Somewhere in and around there. If you have more big attacks, you can play less auras also because you have more deck value. So yeah, if you just get to play like a guardian style deck with a few auras to activate your weapon, that's great. It's just doesn't typically come together, but yeah. And I think you want like, I put 2 to 3 red max. Honestly, I feel like 1 or 2 red might be where I want, like 0 to 2 red. Like I've just had decks that don't play any red auras, and I've been pretty okay with it if I have like enough good attacks, enough arcane and flow generation in the deck. Like,
You know why you're okay with 1 or 2 reds is because the only red auras you should be playing is Corrosive Space Dust red and probably Hollow Shield red, and the other cards don't exist at red, and because you don't like Auric Shards red, there isn't anything else.
even Hollow Shield these days, I'm just like, oh, I don't know. I can play one, but if I don't have to play one, it's kind of nice.
Let me boil down what you just said. You want red Corrosive Space Dust.
Yeah.
And then the more red Corrosive Space Dust you have, the better your deck is.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think I just really don't like these costed 0 block red cards is like what it comes down to. So I try to draft my Ziggy deck so that they don't have very many of these. Because even when you're like, oh yeah, like I have like a red space dust, a red auric shards, and then like my rest of my deck's good. You know what happens sometimes? You draw your red space dust and your red auric shards right at the start of the game. You don't have the flows to support them, and you just like you explode for it. Like it's just like there's just like always a way that these cards can like screw you over, is what it feels like. So I kind of just like having my auras and my resource space. I can pitch them for late game if I need to for my weapon, and then just like play big attacks, and like that's the deck. I think that's my favorite version. Is it feels the most stable because yeah, these red auras just feel like you just draw the wrong hand, or you do everything, you line it up, you play out your space dust, you have your flittering spike, and then you're going to draw up and you have all your flows to protect your space dust from their ping effects, and then you don't draw a blue, and it's just like there's just like so much that can go wrong. So I really like the second cycle auras because you know what? In second cycle, you always draw the blue.
Yeah, and you have flows at that point.
Especially if you have dualities in your deck. Even if you don't have flows, you have flows.
Maybe eight's too many. Maybe eight aura is too many. I think you really want like 5 to 6, maybe 4 to 6.
I think you like can play 8 if you are playing some of these reds. It's sort of like you need enough good reds. It's just you can't always play the deck that doesn't get to play like red hollow shield. Like sometimes you just need to play that card.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Red Hollow Shield is good into Acilio, so like, yeah, I think maybe a better way of thinking about it is like I would like sideboard or like draft Hollow Shield for the Acilio matchup, and hope not to play it into like someone like Aurora, for example, and just like make sure I have access to them, but maybe I wouldn't be like wanting to play them if possible. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a card you can main deck, but if I can also just get away with not main decking it, that would be my preference. And often like when I think about the 6 auras, it's like often just like I have like 3 of the blue auras and then I'm playing like 3 of the yellow auras, and like that's, or like 2 of the yellow auras and a space dust, and like that's
you have
pretty
like
good.
1 flow tide, 1 epileptical conflux, which is the one that makes embodiment. You have like 3 blue, the blue aura got common, and you have a space dust. That's your 6. That's perfect. That's actually perfect.
Yeah, that's great. I think you can play more. I think you can go up to the 8 count, just like you're going to draw hands where you explode a little bit more. And like sometimes you need to do it for card quality, but like, yeah, my preference is like on the low end, I think. It's just too many no blocks get you in a lot of trouble.
Moving on, we have 1 to 2 Auric Shards or Storm Shard. Just a way to cheese some damage. You just really need to cheese some damage. Like, if your opponent wants to, they can fatigue you back, right? Like, that's the problem with Ziggy, is like, if you don't have ways to push damage, like you don't have your pulse rays, you don't have your space dust, you don't have your auric shards, like you will never be able to close a game out.
Yeah. And the fragment effects get really powerful at low life totals. Like if your opponent starts having to block and you are taking cards and you get to go like blue ebbing arc stride and they have to block it and it gets go again, then you get to send like blue shattering flow tide and they're like, oh, I have to block it and give you a flow. As they get low, they really run out of options, especially because you have like the arcane on their turn kind of finish, like maybe even more reliably than Acilio, weirdly. You can kill them on their turn. Yeah, your deck is so powerful at low life totals. It's like how do I get them there kind of thing. And these auric shards or storm shards is the way to do it.
Okay, and then the last little bit would be lots of flow generation. Kind of just like we already talked about the premium flow generation cards like circular flow tide. This kind of also counts towards your aura count, but man, I don't know if I can say this enough, but man, circular flow tide is crazy good. It just like fills all the spots and fills all the check marks you kind of want in your deck with just one card. So yeah, just a lot of circular flow tides is nice.
Yeah, unfortunate short printed, so you usually only get one. Anyways, yeah. To summarize the deck outline, because we kind of went into a lot of detail there, you want like 10 to 13 blues, a mix of zero cost and costed red attacks, like minimum 8, probably more like 10 to 12 is ideal. 6 to 8 auras to flicker. You can maybe even go a little bit lower on auras, but yeah, we talked a lot about lower aura count being more consistent if you have the card quality for it. 1 to 2 auric shards or storm shards to push over, and then basically as much flow generation as you can get. I guess on the topic of flow generation, we can go into our next section, flow management. I think flow management is actually at its most important in Ziggy because of your weapon, because you have ward auras that you need to protect with your flows, and because you have these cards that really, really demand your lightning flows. If you're playing red Cosmic Space Dust, that is a great card. If you can't flicker it and activate the weapon, that's a really bad card. And if you play it and it gets pinged off by a duality because you only had one flow, still a pretty bad card. So like you need to set it up and you need to have the flows to support it. And that usually means like not just the flow to activate to do that, but maybe like 2 flows to protect it, to make sure that you're safe from like double duality or like whatever, or like a Constella from Acilio that's amped. Like you want to make sure that you can make these cards stick. And because of that, you really need the flows to make this function. And if you're like down a flow, if you missed a flow somewhere, I feel like sometimes you like look back at the game and you're like, man, if I had one more flow, I could have protected my hollow shield and then like I could have won the game. There's a lot of this with Ziggy. I think it's like really punishing if you mismanage your flows.
I think your goal when you're playing Ziggy will be to have like 2 to 3 flows throughout the whole game, right? Like you always just want to have 2 flow, 3 flow floating around so you can like kind of be like flexible and do things with it. And then when you're ever thinking about maybe using your lightning flow as a spell void, just think about, oh, like is there going to be like a better spot where this lightning flow is going to be worth, 2 points, maybe even 3 points. And just keep that in mind where if you're gonna cash in your lightning flow for just 1, have a talk with your life total. Just feel like, do I really need this spell void 1 here? And then that could make or break your game pretty quickly. So I've definitely had Ziggy games where I'm just like, I'm at 0 flow. I have to just like do this like really inefficient like cosmic duality just to make my flow. So then like I can do something, right? Like yeah, it can get really really bad when you don't have the flows.
Yeah, even just like saving a ward 2 aura from a ping so that you actually get 2 out of it, like that's a flow that's worth 2, right? So there's just lots of opportunities for this in Ziggy. So I would lean towards being conservative, making sure you have flows, and thinking about what auras are left in your deck. If you know that Space Dust is coming, make sure you save the flows for it. If you are running low on auras, you've played most of them out, you kind of know where they are in your second cycle, you can use your flows a little more aggressively. But yeah, just be like aware of what's left in your deck, how many weapon activations, this type of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's go through the matchups really quickly.
Yeah, let's go through the matchups. The first question here is, do you want to go first or second?
I think I like first in the Mirror and Acilio. Mirror because of fatigue stuff. I guess Acilio also because of fatigue stuff. Also, you have like auras to establish turn 0, which are pretty good value. So you have a lot of ways to get ahead going first. So I think I like first in Mira and Acilio, and then I think all the heroes are like this. You want second into Aurora because you don't want her to go second, basically.
Yeah, Aurora going second is so much damage.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you, Ziggy. Ziggy's a fatigue deck, I think, by heart. That's kind of what you end up doing. That's kind of how what the cars end up doing. They just always trend towards fatigue, and fatigue by damage too.
Yeah, your keyword fragment, as much as we've kind of said it's like not great, it makes them want to block, right? So you're trading cards, and that's kind of like the heart of what Ziggy does. So Ziggy Mirror, no surprise. Your game goes towards fatigue. You kind of are both on this attrition-y trade up on cards kind of deal. You want to try to block red fragments with at least one card as much as possible, because even if it's a 2 block, you're blocking for 4, and that's a lot of deck value. You want to maximize your wards and make sure that you're getting full value out of them. Remember, Aphrodite can do 2 arcane. So if you have like a hollow shield, you need to have a plan for 2 arcane, maybe even 3 arcane if there's a duality. These are things to think about.
I think one of the big things against the Ziggy mirror, or honestly, this is just like playing against Ziggy in general, is careful about your opponent's auric shards. We'd say that we don't like auric shards that much, at least on this show, but it does 5 damage out of nowhere, right? Like it will kill you if you're at 5. So probably like 7 or 8 life total is kind of like your safe point, and anything below that you could just explode out of nowhere.
Yeah. And I think in general, maintaining a high life total gives you a lot more options to like potentially not deal with a fragment that's really punishing, or to take a bit from a Polaris, these types of things, because the weapon endgame is so strong. So sometimes it's even like, yeah, once you go to 10, you really have to start managing your life total. And if you get org shards down to like 4 or something, you're in trouble typically.
You know what really good card in the mirror is the defense reaction.
Yeah, the D-React's good into Ziggy in general, but especially the mirror. Even the yellow one is like so reasonable.
Wow, against Auric Shard, it basically covers up the whole card.
Yeah, yeah. So card to look out for in your sideboard. I think even like your Acilio deck can play like yellow Fluttering Force Field into Ziggy. Even your Aurora deck, if it's like, depending on the cards you have, having like 1 Fluttering Force Field, pretty good.
Yeah, and then your opponent like Storm Shards you or Auric Shards you, and just like Fluttering Force Field. It blows your opponent up, right? Like they're trying to leak 5 damage against you, and you say no. Like, what are they gonna do? You're at 15 now. Okay. Anything else about the Acilio mirror? Not Acilio mirror, Ziggy mirror. Sorry.
No, that's about it. Just like maximize your value per card as much as possible while maintaining your life total and using your weapon. This matchup can go to stalemate. So if you're a little bit sloppy with how you manage all your flows, your weapon activations, when you block, all of this, you can wind up in a spot where neither person can kill each other. This is also to say, like, if you are really ahead, I've had these Ziggy mirrors where I'm like really, really ahead. Like I'm at like 13 and my opponent's at like 4. You might not need to block in some spots where you would normally block, even if it's good value. Like you're like, I can like keep this red Heaven's Claw or even like yellow Heaven's Claw, or I can like block their 0 for 4 fragment. And it's like, maybe you're getting to a point where there's a few enough cards in deck that you actually just need the attack to make sure that you can kill them at the end of the game, because they're not going to kill you. So maintaining your life total is really good, but also make sure you have enough damage in your deck to actually end the game, because this is probably the matchup the most prone to just drawing.
Yeah, I think so too. Not even just this matchup, but I think every matchup, even against like Acilio, like just be aware of, if you're going to cash in your like ward ability for less than kind of face value, just be aware that you could go to fatigue. Then let's talk about the Acilio matchup. I think a lot of your cards in Ziggy just have ward, right? Like your yellow card has ward too, which makes it that your Acilio matchup probably one of the best, right? Like Acilio cannot just blow you up. I guess they can still just blow you up if you don't draw your ward cards, but in general, like you have the most amount of arcane prevention in the format, so you will be able to kind of like slow the game down to the pace where you want it to. So just to be aware that you can ward, you can just fatigue out the Cilio if you do have enough of these ward cards, and be aware of how much actual prevention you have in your deck.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good way to put it. And pressuring is important too. You want to trade attacks to take cards from them because this lowers their output and it also takes threats out of their deck. If you keep hitting them with like these fragment cards, they kind of need to block them because if they don't block them, fragment does big damage. And sometimes if they have like multiple red spells, that means they just have to block with a red spell so that they don't die. And that's a red spell that they're not sending at your face. And honestly, sometimes even the yellow and blue spells, if you're just sitting there and warding and defending, and they get to resolve every red, and then they get to start resolving their, their yellow lightning overloads for 3, and like there's just like a lot of damage in that deck if you let them resolve everything. So you need to be like actively taking cards from them while maintaining your life total.
I think this is one of the biggest tips I have is Cosmic Duality Reds. You can attack with this card. It's a 2-for-5 essentially. Like, that's fine. Just if you attack with it, your opponent either takes some damage or they have to block with 2 cards, and both scenarios is like reasonably good for you. This is if you already have like a bunch of flows and you don't actually need to like. Essentially, what this card is like if you use it for the ability, yes, it's worth 2, and like obviously the go again. But if you attack it as a 2-for-5, it's fine. Like, just don't what is that word? Tunnel vision yourself into thinking that you have to use it for the arcane damage and the lightning flow. Like, I feel like I've watched a game where I'm just like, oh, Ziggy's gonna win this game, and then they just like use both their red dualities to deal 1 and make a flow, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if they have enough damage anymore. Just be careful with the like fatiguing is going to be an issue for both you and the Cilio opponents. Just like if you're going to convert your hand like poorly to like conserve your life total, think twice about your red cosmic dualities. And the next thing will be in the Cilio mirror, you have a lot of lightning flows. If you can, don't just we talked about this earlier, but if you can prevent 1 only, think about a better spot to do it. I think a best way to think about it is like, let's say you have only 1 flow and you have a hollow shield. If you can ward 4 with your hollow shield, that lightning flow is worth 3 more life. So it can be worth 3 points in some scenarios where you wouldn't have been able to convert your hand. And you might even get an Aphrodite activation, so it might be worth like closer to 5 points if you just saved a flow. So just be careful about when to use your flows, and only like this is the matchup where you should be able to convert your flows for like 2 points plus on almost every flow you make.
Yeah, agreed. Maximize that ward, stop those on hits. Yeah, all of that's important. And another good use for flow that is pretty specific to this matchup, you can use Ziggy on Spellbane Sigil or Thunderous Retort to flicker them when they have the start of turn trigger that destroys them. With Thunderous Retort, you actually still get the go again as well. And this can just basically let you keep like a red Thunderous Retort or Spellbane Sigil for 2 turns to shut down Acilio. And finding the right spot to do this can be really, really powerful in the matchup.
Yeah, and the funniest part about Spellbane Sigil is like at the beginning of your turn, Spellbane Sigil triggers, you pitch a blue, activate Ziggy. You can also activate Aphrodite too.
Yeah, you still get the pressure out of it. So it's quite a nice use of your flows, and I feel like this play can be like a nail in the coffin in the matchup, where you like Spellbane Sigil, blow them out, and then you flicker it, and they're just like, please, like, stop.
Yeah, it can really just Like, yeah, it's so gross. It's actually so gross.
Yeah, I've hit the opponent with the like smack you, play the spellbane sigil on my turn. They look at my spellbane sigil, they go pass, and then you flicker it, and then you weapon and smack them again, and then just like, oh, like it's over.
Okay, let's just wrap up this episode with the Aurora matchup. Man, I don't even know what to say about the Aurora matchup with Ziggy. I'm always kind of confused in this matchup, honestly.
I think you're just playing like a value game.
I feel like the game usually, like when it tends to go towards fatigue, you're winning, and then otherwise they just blow you up and lose sometimes because you have like pearls in your deck.
Sometimes they also fatigue you.
Yeah, sometimes they fatigue you too. I don't honestly, I really don't understand this matchup.
I think that basically you just need to play good numbers, block well, send efficient 1 to 2 card plays back, and maybe the occasional 3 card play, like your Storm Shard on Flittering Spike kind of thing. And maybe a good tip is try to starve them on flows to deny their go again. This will give you space to have that 3 card play somewhere. Or resolve your bigger cards. So if you're able to deny them on go again, that feels like one of your win cons. Try to resolve your red attacks as much as you can, but you also still have to preserve your life total. So I think it's just kind of like very traditional Flesh and Blood, but you want to deny flows and starve them on go again as much as you can.
Okay, play good Flesh and Blood?
Yeah, play good numbers, maximize value. Make sure that you're trading back and not just blocking, because if you're just blocking, you'll fatigue. This is the kind of matchup where having like a 0 for 4 instead of a 5 power fragment is important, because at least you're like leaking a damage. Whereas if you're just trading 1 card for 1 card and then they get to hit you and trade up on cards and swing their weapon, like you're just falling behind. So you need to find spots to play your 2 card hands, play your 3 card hands, and ideally your 1 card hands are giving you more than 1 card worth of value when they defend.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Honestly, not much else to say about the Aurora matchups.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like super technical. I guess the gloves can blow up your wards. So like if you have a hollow shield, there's ping effects and then there's also gloves. So there's a lot of stuff to protect from. That's probably one dimension.
Honestly, I just don't want to have hollow shield into Aurora. I think that's where I'm at.
Yeah, if I can avoid it, I would much rather avoid it. But if you have to, you have to. But yeah, that's the Aurora matchup, and that's gonna be the How to Draft Ziggy episode. Hope this helped you. I think Ziggy is probably the hero that people have the most questions about. They feel the most particular about having the right mix of cards. I think they're also just like the deck where you can have a good deck, and if you don't make very good decisions as well, you may not get there. Like it can be very punishing to play them. So if you're working on Ziggy for Nationals draft or maybe Pro Tour coming up, I would recommend getting some practice games in too, because the gameplay is just very technical, I think.
Yes, I think I agree with that. I think one of the biggest tips I can give you is that let's say you do a draft, maybe play extra games with that draft deck with Ziggy, mostly because like some decks you'll be like, wow, this deck feels so good. And then what actually ends up happening was like your auric shards just lined up, so it felt good. And then if you play more games, you'll be like, wow, these auric shards are really, really bad. And or like there's a lot of Ziggy games where when the cards line up, the deck feels unbeatable. And then on the games where the cards don't line up, the deck feels unplayable sometimes. So you really do want to have like that consistency piece. And I feel like our guide here really leans in on how do we not have these like inconsistent Ziggy decks.
Yes, yeah, I agreed. That's going to wrap us up. I hope that you enjoyed this episode, and good luck to you if you have a nationals coming up for the final week of Nats, or you have PT or battlegrounds, whatever events you have coming up. Good luck to you. If you want to get in touch with us, you can find us on social media. Jay is at UedaJ on Twitter. I'm at YukiLeeBender on Twitter and Blue Sky. You can also email us at onthebobble@gmail.com or get in touch with us through the Patreon Discord. It's available to all patrons, and our Patreon is patreon.com/onthebobble. That's going to be a wrap for this one, and good luck to everyone at your events. See you next time.